Developed in the late 1960s, video games have quickly adapted to go from Pong to 100-plus hour role-playing games like Final Fantasy. Video games offer a grand experience that can suck in players more than movies or literature can, since the player actually controls the game. In recent years, video games have made further strides in becoming a fantastic art medium, with games like Journey and Flower being so abstract that they can only be described as an artsy game, in the way that one would view an expressionist painting. However, those that only see games as two extremes, kid stuff and over-violent, are quick to dismiss video games, even big-name critics like Roger Ebert. Before his death, Ebert wrote on his blog, "In principle, video games cannot be art." This and many more arguments like it have caused video games to go unrecognized as how great a medium it truly is. Usually when someone who doesn't know much about video games looks at them, they usually see only two extremes. They see kiddie stuff like Mario Brothers, and then they see unnecessarily violent games like Call of Duty. They get up in arms about how kids shouldn't be playing violent games, and get upset and accuse video games of being evil when a mass shooting happens. So far, this is pretty par for the course for how new art forms are treated. In the 1950s, comic books were studied to see how they could impact impressionable minds. They were declared the devil's work, and in October 1954, publishers formed the Comics Magazine Association of America and adopted a regulatory code. No thought was put into how great the art form could be, or what great stories could be told. People only saw the bad that it could do. The same is happening with games today. No one looks closely enough to see how great the video game stories can be. If one needs a single answer to a question like, tell me one video game that would deserve Oscars if it were a movie, then that answer would be 2013's The Last of Us. At first glance, The Last of Us is just another zombie game in a genre that has become oversaturated recently. However, where The Last of Us shines is the characters. The player primarily controls a man in his mid-50s named Joel. He's been living in the apocalypse for the past 20 years, having been ripped out of his ordinary life beforehand and placed into a living nightmare. His young companion, Ellie, is a 14-year-old girl who's known nothing but the apocalypse. Together they must survive the infected, bandits, and the environment itself as they travel cross-country. The game tells a gripping story as you follow these two misfits that must work together, even when they don't want to. Through use of a minimalist score that usually only appears to heighten the sense of danger or to help present an emotional moment, The Last of Us doesn't use violence just for violence's sake, like other zombie stories such as The Walking Dead. Killing the infected is usually necessary, but when you encounter other people, you really have to consider how to proceed. You could kill them, sure, but these are people just like you. 20 years ago, they held a regular job and had a mortgage to worry about before the end of everything. Now they're just trying to survive like you. Sometimes that means setting up ambushes to kill people attempting to cross country. As Colin Moriarty put in his review for IGN, the beauty of stealth in The Last of Us is the incredible, uncomfortable realism you're forced to witness each and every time you execute a silent kill. Watching a survivor fruitlessly swat at Joel's arms as he strangles him to death is disturbing. The Last of Us does a phenomenal job of making each and every enemy feel human. This gives the player a nagging feeling in the back of their head, making them question whether you're playing as a good person or not. This further plays into the story as a whole, and makes the entire game an emotional roller coaster that will scare you, make you cry, and make you smile at the legitimately sweet moments between the two leads, only to quickly turn around and scare you again. Not only does the game get you invested in the characters on screen, but also with those that you never meet. The world itself is a character in the game, with countless other stories to tell in it. A completely missable part of the game if you're not looking hard enough is a series of letters that tell the story of a fisherman that was out at sea when everything went down. Through several letters you find as you progress through a section of the game, you can discover how this man started a small community of survivors in a dried out sewer, complete with a school, kitchen, and laundry room. The player that doesn't find these letters will still be able to understand what happened as they make their way through the once bustling community, but reading the letters to go along with the skeletons, dozens of infected, and wrecked furniture makes it all the more heartbreaking to witness. With having won over 250 Game of the Year awards, it's no wonder that The Last of Us is regarded as one of the best games ever created, if not the best game ever created. It's almost a shame that the game is a PlayStation exclusive, since an entire ecosystem of players on the Xbox and Nintendo consoles can't play it. To anyone that doubts video games, The Last of Us's overall package is so incredibly special, so exceptionally noteworthy, making it such a must-play experience. Still, some people might accept that great acting in The Last of Us, but be turned off by the darkness of the story. In that case, an alternative story filled with fun moments, great characters, and the same great storytelling is needed.
What's going on? That's my blood. That's my blood. That's a lot of my blood. Oh, God.
Inspired by the pulp adventures of franchises such as Indiana Jones, the Uncharted series is considered to be one of PlayStation's premier titles. Players control Nathan Drake, a sarcastic, charming adventure hunter with plenty of quips and wit to boot. Along for his adventures is his mentor/father figure Victor Sully Sullivan and love interest Elena Fisher. Together, the trio trot around the globe in search of lost civilizations and their treasures, only to find vicious adversaries and dark secrets waiting for them. 4 games have been made in the mainline series for the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4, and a spin-off was made for the PlayStation Vita for its launch in 2012. Over these 5 games, they've evolved from Uncharted Drake's Fortune being an endearing story with an outstanding score, great performances, and fun gameplay that should put this title on the top of your holiday wishlist, to Uncharted 4 carrying on the series' proud tradition of peerless polish and style. Possibly one of the main reasons that Uncharted works so well is the chemistry between the 3 main leads. Veteran voice actor Nolan North pours his heart and soul into the character of Drake. From the 5-year-old-like joy at finding a lost civilization, to the bewilderment he has at why goons aren't escaping the burning chateau they're standing in, instead choosing to shoot at Drake and his companions. Richard McGonagall's Sully brilliantly jumps between energetic treasure hunter to an I am too old for this father figure on a dime, while Emily Rose's Elena is a perfect partner for Drake, obsessed on the story while Drake is obsessed over the treasure.
I'll get the story and you get whatever it is you're after.
The 3 will trade quips and barbs even in the most dire of situations and grow closer together from game to game.
Well, not going down there without some hardware.
Go talk to that rug merchant we just passed.
Oh, guns, weapons.
He's not really a rug merchant.
Oh, right.
The sheer likability of the 3 is a testament to the quality of the writing that director Amy Hennig put into her years working on the games. Each new title in the franchise set the precedent for how good games could be written and acted. Uncharted has become so successful that Sony announced a film years ago, but it's been stuck in development almost since it entered production. That's okay though, because the games are already compared to movies often enough, and that's another thing that makes games great, is that games are basically one big art piece already.
Well.
It's cute.
What?
Because it's a well.
Shall we?
Game development is tricky. One might just think of a group of nerds with big glasses and pocket protectors sitting in front of computers all day when they think of game development, but that can't be further from the truth. Sure, it takes a lot of screen time to make a game, but it doesn't just require coders. It also requires artists. It requires musicians. It requires actors. It includes basically the exact same jobs that would be needed to make a modern-day blockbuster film with a ton of special effects. Basically, video games are a medium of mediums, employing tons of artists that make one big art piece. If a painter put a painting up in an art gallery depicting a futuristic man traveling the moon with a tiny robot, it might be thought of as high art. If a composer wrote and conducted an eerily beautiful symphony, it might be thought of as high art. If an author wrote a book set in the future and got Peter Dinklage to read the audio version of it, it might be thought of as high art. Put all these things together and add some gameplay and you get Destiny, a massive game that took hundreds of people and millions of dollars to create. Hundreds of people that poured blood, sweat, and tears into making what they thought could be art. Upon launch, the game had problems, such as zero story and stilted acting from Peter Dinklage, but it was breathtakingly beautiful. If you took the rendered backgrounds and sets out of the game and put them up for display, there's no doubt they would be regarded as high art. Why shouldn't it be? Just because it's interactive art does not stop it from being art. From certain points of view, all art is interactive. It is there in the very act of interpretation. Video games allow us to engage in its story in a way no other medium can, by letting us control the characters and at times, even their fate. I can remember playing Infamous back in the day. In the game, you played as Cole McGrath, an ordinary guy that ended up with electricity powers at the cost of thousands of lives. Throughout the game, players are given the choice to either be the hero or the villain, with choices scattered throughout the game in various ways. I had already played the hero story and was replaying it as the villain. I came across a point in the game where I was stopped by a guy blocking my way out of a sewer. I could either tell him that his wife had been killed by the mob to get him to open the door for me, which she had been, or fry the switch with my powers, killing him in the process. Even though I wasn't actually this person, I still felt empathy for the man and decide to tell him rather than kill him, even though I was supposed to be the bad guy this time around. The game sucked me in with its characters and atmosphere, getting me to feel for things that weren't actually happening. This is the exact same thing that happens in literature and film, except you can make direct choices in how the story progresses. The past few examples might be regarded as more adult-oriented, though, since they range from being rated T to M. Maybe someone only regards art as something that is available to everyone to enjoy, not just those mature enough to understand it. So, is there a game rated E for everyone that has a deep story that anyone can appreciate? There is, and even the title shouts kid-friendliness. It's called Drawn to Life, released for the Nintendo DS in 2007 with a sequel released in 2009 on both DS and Wii. The story features fictional creatures called Raposa, set in that calling out to their creator, the player, to send them a hero to fight the forces of darkness. The player then draws a hero using the DS stylus. From there, the hero travels the world under control of the player and saves it by drawing useful tools, rescuing villagers, and defeating shadow monsters. Seems like a pretty straightforward kid's story, and it is at face value. However, near the end of the first game, the hero rescues a human, a creature that shouldn't exist in that world. He and the Raposa villagers are confused at why he is there, but the game passes it off as a joke. In the second game, though, the human villager Mike has much more to do. As the color in the world starts to disappear, the villain from the first game returns and says that he is actually trying to save the world, not destroy it. The villagers don't believe him, and the hero manages to defeat the darkness once again. The villagers go to return color to the world, but when they do, everything and everyone disappears, except for Mike. As the credits roll, we see Mike as a human boy living in the real world with his mom, dad, and older sister. On the way home from a carnival one night, they are in a car wreck that puts Mike into a coma, claims the lives of his parents, and disfigures his sister's face. Mike eventually wakes from his coma, and the player sees the Raposa villagers were merely stuffed toys that he had won at a carnival, revealing that the events of both games are actually Mike's mind trying to wake him up. Oh yeah, this is a kid's game! Like the best children's movies, the games treat kids with respect and don't talk down to them. Pixar's Inside Out, a critically acclaimed film, deals with the heavy emotional issues like loss and loneliness, and Drawn to Life does the same. So why is Inside Out regarded as art while Drawn to Life is just a video game? Video games are the medium of the future. They offer grand experiences that encompass many different fields of work and mediums that bring joy to millions of players around the globe. One just need look at how many units both PlayStation 4 and Xbox One have sold since launching in 2013 to see how popular gaming is, and how many people think the same. Gamers also make up some of the greatest fan communities on Earth. Video game journalists like Kinda Funny make their living off of fans that pay out of their own pocket to keep them talking about video games. And while most of the games I talked about were PlayStation exclusives, Xbox fans rave about how great the story of the early Halo games and Gears of War games are. Fantastic games aren't just relegated to one console or the other. With monumental stories like The Last of Us, fun romps through history and Uncharted, to choice-based games like Infamous and every Telltale game ever released, video games have proven time and time again that they are art, and they deserve to be given a chance. Even games that are generally thought to be terrible like the E.T. Atari game and Naughty Bear show a grand dedication to the art form that provide jobs for many people. It's time for the older generation of art critics to open up and see what video games can do. It's time to pick up a controller and play.